So this week was pretty quiet. And I was able to do something I have not done in a very long time. So I had some more time on my hands recently. And I was like, you know what? I want to read a good book. But I've been in a very big slump. So all the books I had downloaded on Kindle just were not appealing to me. My Apple books, my iBooks, same thing. I went in there, I started reading a book that I put down 2 years ago, and I put it down again. There's just something about this one I just can't get into. And I think there's like 4 or 5 in the series about this family, and this is book 4. The other 3 I devoured and loved, but this one I just don't care much for. Here, so yesterday, I put in the group chat. There's like me and a few other co-workers in there. And I put in the group chat, I'm in a book slump, give me some recs. Okay? So they're like, oh, have you read Kristin Hannah? Yes. Yes, I have. And yes, most of her books, I'd say probably all her books, are emotionally heavy. I've read Winter Garden, The Nightingale, Firefly Lane. Yes. So they're like, oh, have you read The Women? There's some books that have been on my TBR for a while, and it's because I've been very nervous to jump in. I guess you can see I have commitment issues on certain books and certain book series. So I decided, why not? Well, one of my coworkers already had the book there at work. And I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. So it came recommended, obviously, by her and one of our other coworkers. Well, 2 of them. And I was like, okay, fine. You guys pulled my leg. Okay. So if you don't know what The Women, entails, the book, it's about these Vietnam nurses. During the early years of the Vietnam War, they're learning how to basically survive and help others do the same. And then they come home and they try to learn how to acclimate back to civilian life and not having constantly bombs go off. So I already knew that going in to this book of what it was going to be. But as I'm reading it, it feels emotionally heavy, and not like a normal emotionally heavy, but it hits home emotional heavy. So my dad was actually in Saigon during the Vietnam War as a hospital corpsman for the Navy. He was at one of the hospitals near Saigon, maybe in Saigon. I don't know. He doesn't talk about it much. It's not something he talks about, and I don't ask questions just because, well, it's called respect. So I'm reading this girl's story, and it's from the POV of Frankie. Okay, she's one of the nurses. Okay, so I'm reading her story, and somehow, even though she's female, she's still dealing with a lot of things that my dad would have dealt with. And the reason why is because she says in a few times, oh, we have more corpsmen coming, which would have been my dad. So I'm reading the book, and I'm getting a first-hand account of what he could have saw. He could have seen while he was there. And there are things that, my dad will tell you straight up, it was bad. He will tell you that it was bad. And I remember one time he told me, I hope you never have to see the things that I have seen. And I'm like, okay. And after reading halfway through this book, I can definitely see why he would say that. Yeah. It wasn't 100% graphic, but it was graphic enough that you could visualize it in your mind and be horrified. So that's where I was with it. I'm still there with it. Like, I'm halfway through, and I'm not gonna lie, I started it yesterday, and I got halfway through. It's really good. But again, it hits home. You know, it's a book that shows what my dad could have gone through, and what he probably did go through, like what he saw, you know? So it was very interesting. And I remember in one of the parts of the book, and this is another thing that's very interesting, she talks a couple times about this magazine or newspaper called Stars and Stripes, and how they're depicting this picture at home for the American people. They're not telling them what's being done over here. They're not showing them what's happening, right? And she's growing frustrated by this, that the people back home have this like fake image of what's going on because it's not being reported the way it should be reported, which is being truthful. And I remember in college, I took a lot of history classes because that was my major for a long time. And I had to take, so you have 2 history class for American history. You could take American history like beginning to like 1877, and then you can take the second half, which is 1877 to like, I think it was like early 2000, 1990, whatever the heck, okay? Well, I remember I was home from break, and I was taking the second one, so I was 1877 to like 1990s, okay? And I remember I was in my textbook I was reading because, well, in history class, that's all you freaking do is read. So I'm reading, and my dad's like, can I borrow that when you're done? I was like, yeah, sure. So at the end of the semester, I kept my book because it wasn't that much more. It wasn't a lot to turn in. I only got like $5 or $10 for it. So I was like, I'll just keep it. So I gave it to my dad, and he just started reading. And my dad's very much like, he's a very avid reader like I am. He doesn't read fiction. He reads like more autobiographies and biographies. He does not read like fiction at all, like I do. So he's sitting here and he's reading this book, and he calls me up, and he's like, did you know, about this. I can't remember what it was. It was something that happened during the time of the Vietnam War. And I was like, well, yeah, like we've been taught that for years. And he goes, well, we weren't. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he told me that during the Vietnam War, there was a lot of things those soldiers did not know was actually going on. That they were in their little bubble over there, and that we over here in the state side were in our own little bubble. And that a lot of things were not being said. Truths. So my dad was like in complete shock because the things that were in that textbook, he didn't even know happened while he was over there. And my dad did 2 stints, well, tours. So he was there for 2 years. I believe it was 67 to 69. He was there. He was definitely home before 1970. And he just couldn't believe that there were things that were happening here that they never told them when they were over there. And I think it weighed on him for a while that these things were happening and they were not being told anything. And there was even things happening over there that they didn't even know about. That like, if you were not like involved in it, you knew nothing about it. And that played on him too. Because he's like, I had no idea that was happening around me. Like, obviously, like somewhere else, but like over there, in the country. He had no idea that the things that were happening that only the ones that were involved in knew about. And again, that weighed on him too. There was a lot of things that were kept quiet. Like, not just from the American people, but also from the ones that were actually over there. So it was interesting when I read that part in the book a few times where Frankie talks about that. Where it's like, oh yeah, the newspapers are not telling everything. We're not winning the war. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. You know, I'm here. I see it, you know. So it was interesting because it's like, wow, like my dad, that was, yeah. He also had that realization of like, what's going on here? Of course, his wasn't until way after the war. But yeah, the books brought about a lot of different emotions. I'm not going to recommend it to my dad just because I think it would trigger a lot of emotions for him that I don't want to be triggered. Because he did suffer from PTSD for a little bit. And then after a while, I guess the nervous system set and he was fine. But he will have certain moments where, like, if he hears a noise that he was not expecting, he jumps and then he starts getting, like, kind of freaked out. He will do that sometimes. So, like, I know he still has little things. So, and I know that reading this book would probably definitely be a mental and emotional trigger for him. I am going to, like, tell him about it because we do share our books. We do share, like, oh, yeah, I read this, I read that. So I am going to share it, but I'm not going to suggest he read it just because I don't think it would be good for him. And knowing him, he's going to be, oh, I don't have to read about it to know what the hell happened over there. I lived it. I could easily hear him saying those exact words. So, yeah. While it's a very good book and emotionally heavy, be mindful that it can be very triggering for Vietnam vets to read. Very, very triggering. So, tread carefully on that recommendation. But overall, Kristin Hannah has done a great job, as she always does. But I feel like after this book, I'm gonna need like an emotional cleanser book. Like I'm gonna need like a happy feel good book. So you guys send me book recs on that because I feel like after this one, we're gonna take a little break from her books. We're gonna take a little break. So I'm gonna need something that's uplifting and happy. Okay. So yeah. That's what I've got this week for what's going on in my life. So yeah, tune in next week. Hopefully it won't be as emotional. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you all next week.